George is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since being appointed by border czar by President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris has undoubtedly been a complete failure in her job and has destroyed our country by releasing a record-setting levels of criminals, rapists, and terrorists into our communities. Despite the attempts of the fake news media to whitewash her appointment as border czar, as Axios correctly reported, and they're now lying and say they never did, she was in fact labeled a border czar by nearly every major news outlet across the country. Border czar Kamala Harris said, "Do not come," yet proudly welcomed 11.5 million illegals from over 160 countries, including over 2 million known gotaways who completely evaded U.S. authorities. She stood by and allowed these people to come in and idly watched our children and women being raped by illegal alien criminals. She's not just allowing them to come. The policies of the administration allow the CBP One app to import over 400,000 illegals into American communities. Under her watch as border czar, this has happened. She can fake it for the photo ops, but we know that Kamala Harris wholeheartedly supports the chaos at our border, the chaos in our streets, and the chaos in the families who have been victims of her open border policies. Border czar Harris outlandishly compared ICE to KKK and radically called for the ICE to be abolished. She also posted the Minnesota Freedom Fund to bail out violent Black Lives Matter terrorists who burned down cities, looted stores, destroyed communities, and caused over $2 billion in damage to American communities all over America. Kamala Harris is not only the border czar, she is also the czar of chaos. And her policies have destroyed American. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Was the shooter on the FBI's radar in any way prior to the assassination attempt?
We did not have any information about the shooter. He was not in our holdings before the shooting.
No communication in any chat rooms, no CIs or confidential human sources have any interaction with?
No, we've run a thorough search for the subject through all of our holdings, and he was not in them anywhere.
Were there any FBI agents or informants present at the Trump rally in Butler?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And Mr. Jordan was talking to you about Iran. Were law enforcement resources diverted from the protection of President Trump to John Bolton as a consequence of concern that Mr. Bolton might have been the target of Iranian malign efforts?
That's really a Secret Service decision. I don't know the answer to that. That's really something they would know better. What I can tell you is that there are a number of individuals. You mentioned one who we've brought a case, a specific criminal case for the Iranians targeting for assassination. But how the
are you going to get that answer to us? Whether or not resources were diverted from Trump to Bolton, is that just going to be part of your review?
I think that's going to be part of the reviews by the Inspector General.
The Inspector General for DHS, right?
Of DHS, right. and the outside panel.
And I think that's an important point because the Inspector General for DHS has really fallen out of favor with the administration because he's been pointing out all the problems on the border with Mayorkas and Biden, and we're always kind of worried that they're about to fire him, which would be a really bad idea now that this role that you've identified is so critical. Be a bad idea to fire the IG for DHS during the pendency of this, right, Mr. Director?
I don't think that would be a good idea.
I'm with you on that. So I want to zoom out a little bit. How often do you brief President Biden?
You mean on this specific case?
No, in your role as FBI director.
I mean, I don't know that I could give you a number.
Is it like weekly, monthly, daily?
It's not at a regular cadence. There have been times when there have been months at a time when I haven't, and then there have been times when several days apart I have. Okay. It's always with other people.
The Vice President, is she typically there?
Often has been.
Okay, so when did you notice his decline?
In my interactions, in my role, all my interactions with the current president have been completely professional.
Right, but I mean the cognitive decline. I'm not saying he treated you unprofessionally, just maybe not picking things up as quickly as he used to.
Again, I don't meet with him very often, but what you're describing is not something that I've observed during my interactions with him.
I mean, we've had it observed so often that the ranking member and Mr. Schiff on this committee have said that he could no longer continue as a candidate. And so, since you're the FBI director, I was just sort of wondering, like, who's running the country? Like if something bad happened, you'd have to go brief President Biden about it right now? God forbid?
And on any number of occasions, I have briefed the president, and as I said, those briefings have all been uneventful and unremarkable.
Oh, I can imagine them being uneventful. But in the work where the vice president's also present, like you say, there's like more than half the time there's these briefings, she's there too?
I don't know if I'd said more than half the time. Certainly, there have been times where she's been present. There have been other times where she hasn't.
I take you at your word when you say this is the most complicated threat environment you've ever observed over a long career in law enforcement. And I'm just kind of wondering, with this assassination attempt, with the invasion at our border, with all the Hamas that have been let in that you've talked about and briefed about, like, is Biden up to it? And if he's not up to it, and you're a guy who's been regularly briefing him, like, who's been in on this conspiracy to hide the real Joe Biden from all of us for years? It never occurred to you that this guy wasn't up to it in all these briefings you did?
As I said, my briefings with the president have all been completely fine.
Were they between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m.?
He's asked questions. There hasn't been anything of note in the area that you're talking about.
Yeah, did you ever have to brief him before 10 a.m. or after 4 p.m.? We hear those are as good hours.
I certainly, times that I have briefed have included outside those hours.
Right, okay. I think the American people want to know how we got to this point with someone who's so diminished his own party has basically put him out to pasture. And since you had close proximity and the vice president had close proximity, I'm just kind of wondering if you were being straight with all of us about how things were going with him. I guess we'll have to figure that out.
You can count on me to be straight with you, sir.
We'll see.